Hi there, everyone. Welcome, welcome. This is Akasha, and I am offering this 7-day series, Alchemizing Your Awareness in Asana. And if you've been following along with the playlist or you've just been dropping in on the lives, you'll notice that I have created a little video before we do a practice that kind of gives you the philosophy or the pre-content for what we'll be doing. And if you're not watching anything in order, don't worry about it. Go in whatever way works best for you. Today, we're going to be talking about Chaturanga Dandasana or four-limb staff pose. And there's some props that you would like for this practice. And I'm really going to suggest, even if you're like, I don't really use props, you'll want the props because we're going to be talking about this pose in a very different way. So if you have a yoga belt or a yoga strap, you'll want to have a loop in that that's big enough to go from upper arm to upper arm, but still allow you to have your elbows along either side of the body so that we can use the strap. No requirement here, but if you want to, try this, especially as a beginner, you're going to seriously want the props. Trust me on this. I discussed my alignment background in the other video that I have loaded for this practice today. And these practices, these 4 o'clock lives are really about us doing the actual practice, right? So you can go back and watch that video, which is titled Yoga Four-Limb Staff Pose. And then this is about the practice. And I tell you a little bit in that video about how I learned this posture, which is what I'm going to teach you today, because I believe in learning this pose this way, it really took a lot of the mental narrative about like, I've got to be strong to do the pose, because we're going to talk about the energy. You're also going to want 2 blocks. So I'm sitting on mine right now. I have 2 blocks. I'm going to relocate myself back there to the yoga mat, and we are going to get this class started. All right. So you'll need your strap and of course your blocks. And then if you know that the kneecaps are sensitive, if you find that you're on a hardwood floor like myself here, you may want to have a blanket for underneath the knees, or if you have a second yoga mat, you can also fold that up so that you have that as well. We're not on our knees a lot, but if the kneecaps are sensitive, we are going to want to have that. All right, so what I want you to do is, before we get started, I'm going to close this door because that light is going to bug you and me as we look. Perfect. I want for you to first just have a seat and let's talk about this posture and why it's such a challenge. So four-limb staff pose, if you are a new student and you're like, I don't even know what she's talking about. Four-limb staff pose is sometimes this low push-up position here, and it requires a lot of upper body strength. But not upper body strength the way we're used to thinking of it. We're used to thinking of upper body strength as biceps. And then, of course, the chest a little bit, right? This particular pose, four-limb staff pose, I believe is the gateway to all arm balances. And I want to explain that a little bit. So four-limb staff pose is the first place that we begin to cultivate strength in the triceps in a really dynamically powerful way. Sure, when we're doing things like Warrior 2, Warrior 1, Warrior 3, triangle pose, these are all activating the back of the arm, right? But we really need to have another layer of strength, not only in the tricep, but also in the rhomboid muscles, which are between the shoulder blades. And if you have really rounded shoulders, this is indicative of weak rhomboid muscles and strong or quote unquote tight pecs. That's how a physical therapist would language it. As you get that Chaturanga Dandasana to work in the sense of having stability in the shoulder system, you'll notice that the shoulders will naturally be drawn back. And this is really powerful when it comes to the expression of four-limb staff pose and moving into upward facing dog. So if you're going into four-limb staff pose and you have this rounded shoulder and then you're pressing up, this can be a lot of work on the rotator cuff, which is the number one thing that people often have issues with in this shape is their rotator cuff. The next thing is their elbow and then the wrist. And those are all part of the same system, right? They're all part of the arm. So when we understand how to use our core and we understand how to use our legs in this shape, what starts to happen is we can look at where we're over muscling and under activating. And this really shifts the energy balance of what's happening in this expression of the pose. And as I mentioned in another video, I am trained Iyengar first, and then I went into Vinyasa and many other styles. So I always have this alignment intelligence inside of everything that I teach. And one of the things that I've really embodied in my own practice and love sharing with everyone is this idea of not doing the pose, but being the pose. And that single statement, it sounds beguilingly simple, but the thing is, if we don't understand how energy works in a shape, it's really challenging mentally to stop over efforting to become the shape. However, when you start understanding and really tapping into this known concept beyond the mind that everything is energy, you can take the shape and allow the energy to express itself in form. And that's really what alchemizing your awareness in asana is about, getting you to stop overworking and to allow life to flow through you so that you can be a vessel of optimal expression. So the way that I learned Chaturanga Dandasana was not from the top down, which is how most classical flow people teach it, but it was actually from the ground up. And again, my roots were in alignment, so we would have these static holds. So what we were taught to do was come into the position here, fire up the legs, and it's called four-limb staff pose because all of the weight is on the hands and the feet. We would squeeze everything in, including those rhomboids, and then as we exhale, we would press up. A lot of people do not have the power to lift up that way because they're thinking that most of the expression of the shape is happening in the arm. Most of the energy in the shape is actually in the legs and the core. And this is why this is such a potent pose to understand. And I hope that there are a lot of beginners that watch this video, because if you can start practicing this pose from this mindset, as you start to lower down, you'll understand that that drawing in of energy is absolutely pivotal in sustaining the shape. So I want to show you a few ways that I was taught this pose, and I continue to share in my teachings of students when it comes to this is how we do the shape from a healthy standpoint. So if you grabbed your blocks, you'll have one block that'll go, hopefully it'll be able to go on the sternum here. If this is uncomfortable for the chest, you could have it where it's on the sternum crosswise like so. I'm going to go so that it's parallel to my sternum. For some people, this is uncomfortable for the breast tissue. So you may go above the breast or above the chest and then have it right beneath the collarbone, still at the top of the sternum there. And then this block is going to go across the space that's right here in between the hip bones. So if you see me standing up, it's not on the pubic bone. That'll be too close to the thighs, and it's not in the belly. You want it to be between the belly and the pubic bone in that sweet spot of the abs here, known as the transverse abdominis. And what you'll do is pick the one for the hips first, because this one will be easier to move. Come down to the forearms, bring that space right above the pubic bone there, and then you'll be able to take the block underneath the sternum, and you can see my shoulders are in alignment with my hips. Now I can bring the hands in, fire up the legs. This is what Chaturanga Dandasana could feel like. And an easy way for you to just check in and power up is squeeze the legs energetically together here, squeeze the elbows in, and then imagine that you're just going to float yourself off the blocks. So try that now with me. Think about drawing the shoulders away from the ears, squeezing the legs in toward one another, squeezing the glutes, which is going to tuck the tailbone a little bit. And then as you start to hover, just notice what happens in the core. So maybe you do this on an inhale, notice the difference. Exhale, relax. Excuse me. Inhale. Now exhale, see if you can hover above the blocks for a moment. And then relax. So what I love about this is a really easy way for you to get the sensation of forelimb staff pose. So you can really understand how the energy is expressed here. We've got the block for the pelvic bones, we've got the block for the chest, and then here we can really see the elbows are in this 90-degree bend. I like to take my pointer fingers and have them slightly point toward the top left and right corners of the mat. And as you're here, send that tailbone toward the heels. You're going to feel the low back get long. Fire up the legs, squeeze them together. This is the power in the legs and the core as we're here. And now it's not really asking us to do anything in the arms just yet, but we have this optimal sense of like, oh, okay, that's how the energy flows. Then we can soften the knees, press up, and come back. From there, let's remove the blocks. Take a moment to interlace the fingers and just gently move the hands and then flip the palms. Nice little wrist stretch. You can reach the arms up. And as you exhale, slowly release. So you also notice that I didn't warm you up to get into this. So this is another thing where sometimes the alignment practices and the vinyasa practices they just approach it really differently. My teacher always said that if you hold a pose long enough, you'll get warm. And that's one of my favorite things about alignment is that we hold warrior two for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And I like the idea of the body warming up in this static way because then it becomes more pliable as we go into other shapes. See what feels best for you and do that, right? Because it's your practice. These little mini workshops are meant to allow you to have a new approach to postures that you may be doing repeatedly, but not really feeling the full expression of the shape. So you know the sensation with the blocks. Now let's see if we can recreate that from the floor up. So meet me on your belly. Shoulders draw away from the ears. And tops of the feet, you want to tuck them so that the balls of the feet and the tops of the toes. So it'll really be the pads of the toes are on the earth here. You're squeezing the legs in, and then this is going to make the thighs want to lift up. Totally fine. Draw the shoulders away from the ears, and then squeeze the elbows in. And as you squeeze the elbows in, draw the navel in. So there's a lot of power here. Take a full breath in, breath out, press up, and hold. And then slowly lower back down. Try that again. Full breath in, breath out, navel in, float up, and then release. Beautiful. Press on up. And let's take a little child's pose here. Hips go toward the heels. We want to keep those forearms active. We want to get a little bit more into the armpit chest. So we're pressing the palms down and then letting the head come down if possible. 2 more breaths. From here, slowly coming up so that you're still seated on the knees. Flip that left hand over and just let the back of the hand go into the floor. And then shake it out. And we'll do the same thing with the right hand. And shake it out. And then from here, I have a seat on the feet option. You could sit on a block if this is easier for you. And let's talk about the strap, because I understand that this requires a lot of strength to just float up from the floor. That's why I wanted you to have the block so that you know what it's going to feel like when you actively press up, right? And I want you to find your strap. Make sure you've got your loop in there, and you're going to take this and place it around the elbows. And I'll turn to the side so it's not on the forearms, really important. You want to have it right above the elbow where the bicep and tricep muscles are, right? Turn this way so you can see. And then the extra, you can just move it out of the way. And you can see how this is creating a little strap action to go to go below the breast on the ribs. So if you need to, you can always bring it down a little bit, right? And what we're going to do is use this as a little hammock. So we're going to come into a plank position, and you're going to feel your body press out into the strap. Notice how the shoulders move away from the ears. Squeeze the legs together, and as you exhale, lower down into chaturanga. And so now the strap is really doing a lot of the weight. Next step, squeeze everything in, draw the navel in, press back up to plank. And then release it down. From here, you can let your hands come out or arms come out of the strap for a moment. Shake out those wrists. One of my favorite ways to release the wrists, the most common thing that people talk about when they first start doing yoga, is to massage the palm with the thumb, both hands, especially this area here of that carpal tunnel area. And then to hold the wrist and then just move the other hand as you make a fist. Same thing. And then massage the forearms. Just holding and making circles with the fist. And shake it out. So let's do I call this the 4-limb staff pose hammock. So let's do that one more time. And then we'll revisit the blocks to make sure that you've got it and show you how to start taking the blocks away as you start to work into the shape. All right, so again, we place that strap around. Tricep, bicep area above the elbow. We want to be careful about what happens around the elbow. There's some nerves here that if they get impinged in any way with the strap, they can make you feel a little nauseous. And we don't want that, right? There's no need to have that. So press into the hands, take the legs back, find your plank. Get nice and strong here. Scoop the pubic bone toward the navel. You'll feel the heels lengthen. As you exhale, bend the elbows. Come into your chaturanga here. Shoulders away from the ears. Take a breath in. Exhale. Press up. Beautiful. And then slowly get out of there. So you can remove the strap, place it to the left or right, shake it out. Reach the arms overhead. Interlace the fingers behind the occipital bone, so base of the skull. Press the elbows back and just let the head press back. This will open up all the area that we just really fired up in the shape. And as you exhale, realign head, heart, base of spine. Release the arms out, rotate the wrists. Reverse it and take the arms up. Beautiful. Hands float down. So now let's revisit this T shape. And again, remember, if it's hard for you to have this block vertical like this, you could also have it like the top of a T across this area right at the top of the sternum, below the clavicles, below the collarbones. So as you are working on your chaturanga dandasana or your 4-limb staff pose, you would be here letting the blocks bear all the weight. As you start to feel as though you've got this, you can remove one of the blocks. My suggestion is the block underneath the chest, because then you're going to have to work in the chest and start pressing away from the floor here. And then you could just lift the pelvis, bring it down, let the chest come down, then take the arms out so that you can press up. As you start removing the blocks, you'll really get some great information about where you're compensating, because if you're compensating in the shoulders, you'll feel the shoulders press down before they pop up. We really want to keep those shoulders contracted. If you're compensating in the legs, you'll feel your body slightly move forward because they're overpowering the shoulders. So this action of squeezing everything in is really what creates that apana and pranic movement, which I talked about a little bit in another video. So there's samana vayu, prana vayu, apana vayu. There are other vayus. Vayu is another way to say wind, but these are currents. This is the way energy moves. So when we draw everything in toward the center, it naturally creates an axial length, right, through the whole body. So that's what this practice has been about for you. So let's say that this may be a little bit further than where you are right now. What can you do to build up strength in the back of the arm as well as space in the shoulders? One of my favorite things to do is this little flow of cat-cow. I want to share that with you, so that maybe as you come back to this video, you can use this flow as something to release any muscle tissue like we're doing right now after this practice. But I do like for you to do the practice with the strap and the blocks before you do the flow, because otherwise you get too fatigued and it's going to be hard for you to get information about what's going on, because your body will autopilot compensatory action, especially when you're fatigued. So we'll come into a hand and knee position. You'll inhale for cow, exhale for cat. Press back to child's pose. Come down to the forearm. So right here, start drawing the shoulders away from the ears and start to imagine that you're diving underneath the waist. Squeeze the elbows in. And now you find yourself in cow pose. So you exhale, tuck and round, press back, child's pose. Down to the forearm, shoulders draw back. It's like you're using your hands to drag you through this imaginary wave. Elbows squeeze in and lift up. Exhale, tuck and round. Two more. We'll meet in table pose. So that's a great way to warm up or cool down. Another thing that you can do for the area that's going to be needed for Chaturanga Dandasana are just these knee plank versions of little baby chaturangas, right? So you could have your block underneath the pelvis. As you exhale, you lower down, and then you press right back up. So you exhale, lower down, and press up. So these would be chaturanga push-ups, would be one of the things that I would call those. From here, you can have a seat on your feet for a moment, and let's talk about all the things you need to know as you prepare to go into this practice on your own. One of those is the press up from the floor is best when it occurs on the exhalation. If you do it on the inhalation, it can cause a little bit of a jump in heart rate and blood pressure by proxy, right? So if we do it on the exhalation, we're drawing the fabric or the network, that's a better way for me to say it, of the abdominal walls, external and internal, in and up. And what happens is this kind of gives you a little bit of a buoy sensation or a lifting sensation, which is exactly what we want. The other thing that you have going on for yourself is that you have this ability to really allow yourself to take it slow. And I think that this is something that we get a little overwhelmed with in our practices and in a class, is that we're trying to keep up, which means there's no presence there. So if you can just get on the mat and practice paying attention to your core, just in table pose, just right here, just feel that navel draw in. That's the same sensation that you have in plank, and it's the same sensation that you have in forelimb staff pose. Core in, heart open, mind clear. Draw everything that you feel into the center. So hands are working in, elbows are working in, legs are working in toward the center. This is going to ripple energy through the entire spine. And this is what allows us to flow with the inhalation into upward facing dog or down to the floor and up to cobra. And I'm really looking forward to speaking about back bends in this series, because I know a few of you have sent me private messages and want a little bit more information about something I said in another video, which is we're not bending back in videos, we're lengthening up. The back just naturally happens. So that really speaks here. When we have length before depth, right? The depth of the back bend cannot occur without length of the spine here in forelimb staff pose before we go into upward facing dog. So as always, I hope you're enjoying this series. I know I certainly am. If you have any questions, send me a message. Love your feedback. Love getting private messages and direct messages from you all. And thank you again for your support. I'll see you back here soon. And in the meantime, stay illuminated, everybody, and stay on the mat so that life off the mat stays even more awesome. All right, take care. Bye.